الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وتعالوا بأحسن إلى الدين أما بعد. So inshallah we're gonna try to cover the fiqh of fasting today, inshallah. We had started the acts of worship from Bidayat al-Abid, and so there is obviously a section in fasting in there. So we're going to try to go over it. Now when they talk about fasting, it includes obviously fasting that are mandatory fasting, voluntary fasting, and then things such as that are associated usually with fasting because it's Ramadan, and so they bring in the chapter of i'tikaf. So this kind of in a broad sense. But I wrote a few questions as outlines behind me. And so we're going to go using those as an outline. So inshallah I'm going to go through those questions a little bit, explain it, and then we're going to go into the book because inshallah it'll make it easier and faster. So when they start with fasting, and before I begin, I have to mention a couple of things. Fasting obviously is an act of worship. And so one of the most beloved acts of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is why He rewards for it, a reward that's not parallel to many other acts of worship. And so that being said, it is when something happens that is obligatory and is act of worship, it becomes mandatory for us to seek knowledge and learn what is obligatory. So this is obligatory knowledge that we need to learn. With sufficient knowledge that we are able to carry our acts of worship for it. And I have to say that when it comes to fiqh of fasting, like many other fiqh, there's obviously differences of opinion. But the point of the lecture that we're having is that this is something that we can use to practice. It doesn't mean that it gives us the right to go and give fatwas, but it's just for you yourself, inshallah, to be practiced properly. You can say, I heard this, and this is happening, but don't refrain from giving fatwas or anything like that, because sometimes things differ based on situation. We might not see it as clearly as possible. And so, as usual, we're going to base it only on one opinion. This is what is considered the adopted opinion of the Hanbali school of thought. I will bring in some difference of opinion because some of the, hopefully, things we address today are contemporary issues that talk about whether this negates fasting or not. Because it's contemporary issues, the Hanbali school of thought themselves, the scholars of the Hanbali school of thought, might differ on it, so I might mention 2 or 3 opinions. But if you're following other opinions that are valid opinions from before, and you find out in the Hanbali that invalidates, it doesn't mean that your previous fasting is invalid. You acted upon a valid opinion. And likewise, in the Hanbali madhab, it might be considered not something that does not invalidate, but in other schools of thoughts, it invalidates it, doesn't mean anything, right? As long as you're following something that is a credible, accepted opinion. Not an outlying opinion, but something that is on the outliers. So something that is adopted and accepted. Alright, that being said, the first question is, what is fasting, right? I'm not talking about Ramadan, but what is fasting itself? So they usually try to define fasting. So what is, because it gives us the outline of the things you discuss. So if you understand the definition, quite often it brings in the questions or stuff we're going to discuss afterwards. So the definition of fasting, how do you define fasting? Abstaining from eating and drinking. Is that it? Sexual intercourse. Is there anything else?
For a specific time.
Good, specific time. Yeah, put in there.
In the depth, fashion of everything, our hands, we don't go near any of the...
Okay, good, intention. So refraining from eating, drinking, intercourse, specific time,
any
intention.
Any bad deed.
Okay.
Refraining from.
Now, I have to correct something. You mentioned examples, the things that would negate your fasting. Okay? And so it's better to broaden the definition a bit more. So if you say to withhold from specific things, now you made it very general. So anything that you need to withhold from, all the nullifiers, it goes into that category. So fasting can be described as is that you are withholding with intention. We're going to bring in intention, so you're withholding. Because by the way, the word siyam in Arabic means to withhold, to refrain from something. Imsak. And so the better definition is imsakun, so you're withholding, biniyya, an ashya' al-makhsusa, from specific things. So this is the author that he mentioned. An ashya' al-makhsusa, في زمن مخصوص, in a specific time, من شخص مخصوص, from a specific type of people. So the specific category, you refrain from specific things in a specific time with intention. So now the question begs itself, who are those specific people? What is specific timing? And the aspects of intention, and all these things. So this brings out, the definition brings out the stuff we're going to talk about. So this is what is fast. Now, does anyone know when Ramadan was made obligatory? When is Ramadan made?
Next Sunday is Tarawih.
No.
Second year.
When Ramadan was first made mandatory on Muslims.
Second year.
Second year of Hijrah.
Second year of Hijrah. Okay. The second year, that's correct. Second year of Hijrah. Yes, Jazakumullah khair. Which brings us to the next question, is how do we determine when Ramadan starts?
With the moon.
There are so many
They're
ways.
supposed to be.
So there are three basic ways in the Hanbali school of thought where we determine that Ramadan starts. The first is by seeing the hilal, the crescent. So when you first go out and see the crescent, and the night of the 30th,
20
because you remember the night precedes the day. So on the night of the 30th, before the 30th day, you go out at night. So 29 of Sha'ban, okay, that's normal at night. At night, the 30th of Sha'ban, you go out and you look for the crescent. Okay, so that's when you look for it, visually. So it's a clear day, you're looking for the crescent. Now, if somebody sees it, then everybody fasts. Everybody, I mean all the Muslims. Not just the town, not the city, but all Muslims in the world. The majority of scholars go by global sighting. Only the Shafi'is go by local sighting. So the majority of scholars in the Hanbali school of thought is that it goes by global sighting because it goes underneath the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, "Sumu liru'yatihi." Right? So he said, fast when you see it. And it's usually, if you want to be united as an ummah, this is the best way to do it. It's more actually encouraging, inducing to be united. So global sighting is the opinion of the Hanbali. So you see it, this first day, the first way. So you see the moon on the 29th of Sha'ban, and so you determine, okay, fine, next day is Ramadan, and it's global sighting. Alright, the second way we determine that Ramadan has entered is if we complete the 30th of Sha'ban. Okay? Now, how many people have to see the crescent, by the way, of Ramadan, for us to fast? One person, that's it. Okay? If one person, of course, there's a specific, it has to be a person who is an adult, who is trustworthy. Male, female, slave, makes no difference. One individual that is credible, that the judge accepts their witness, and they don't have to say, I bear witness that I've seen. They all can say, I saw the crescent. And if the judge accepts it, all the Muslims have to fast. One person. Now this is unique for Ramadan only, because any other month, for it to be decided that it's the beginning of the month, you require 2 witnesses. Okay? Which means for Ramadan to end, how many people have to see the crescent? 2. Okay? So for Sha'ban, Ramadan begin, so it's only one person, that's enough, and everybody fasts, and so forth. Alright, so the second way we know that Ramadan enters is if Sha'ban finishes 30 days. Because the month, the Hijri month is either 29 or 30 days. Once 30 days are done, automatically it is the first Ramadan. Now what is the third day? The third method?
Calculation.
No.
Because we go by calculation.
And I'm talking about Hanbali Fiqh. The third way is unique to the Hanbali school of thought. What if you go outside on the night of the 30th and it's cloudy, or there is a sandstorm, or there's so much smoke that it covers the sky? What do? The Hanbali opinion is that it's mandatory for you to fast the next day. Ramadan for us starts the next day. This is the fatwa opinion of many of the Sahaba, whether it's Abu Hurairah, Abdullah ibn Abbas. I'm trying to really remember how many. Actually, I think I should have wrote a footnote here for myself. How many of the Sahaba?
What is the difference between second and third?
So the first one,
No,
the
second
sky is
and third.
clear.
Second and third.
So the second and the third. The second, you completed 30 days of Shaban. The third one, it's the night of the 30th.
Oh, the night of the 30th.
The night of the 30th,
Okay.
and it's cloudy, and you can't see the crescent. So we estimate that the crescent is there, and it's mandatory for you to fast the following day. Okay, so for them, for the Hanabila, Ramadan starts then the following day. However, you have to be careful, because they're doing it out of ihtiyat, right? Out of cautious piety. Ihtiyat. Out of caution. And this is the fatwa of Abu Hurairah, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, if I remember correctly, about 7 or 8 of the Sahaba gave that fatwa. So it's not out of the blue. So this is the adopted opinion of the Hanbali school of thought. Now, of course, if you end up on the day of the 30th of Ramadan, not seeing the crescent, do you break the fast and say it's next day Shawwal? If you have fasted, okay, so if we fasted on the 29th, so if we fasted, so on the night of the 30th, it was cloudy. And we said, okay, you know what? Tomorrow is Ramadan. Now, after 30 days of Ramadan, 2 people still did not see the crescent of Shawwal. Do you break your fast and say it's Eid? No.
You still fast.
No, you still fast. Because you remember, we did this out of caution.
So that first fast was actually
I'm
Shaban.
suspicious.
So that first was the 30th of Shaban. Okay? But it's fine, it's still fine. It's not considered anything.
So you can do 31?
So you can do 31 because technically now that first day was not the first day of Ramadan. Which is fine, it's okay. However, if on a clear night, on the 30th night of Shaban, you saw the crescent, then after 30 days, even if you did not see the crescent, next day is Shawwal. Okay, that's the difference over here. Right? Yes?
Sorry, what did you say about the 29th of Shaban, if you see the moon? I didn't get that. You mentioned that, right?
No,
No.
it's the 30th night of
30th
Shaban.
night, okay.
30th night of Shaban. Right, so this is how we determine the Ramadan. Now, of course, the question comes up of, what about calculation? Okay. I would not be exaggerating if I would tell you that it's unanimous among the scholars that you cannot use calculation to make it obligatory for all Muslims to fast.
But
Okay.
it is happening.
Let
Right
me
here.
continue.
In this class.
Now, if one person saw it, it becomes obligatory on all Muslims to fast. However, it is unanimous. I wouldn't be exaggerating if I say it's unanimous that the scholars say that calculations cannot be used to make it mandatory on the ummah to fast. Is that clear? The majority of scholars say calculation is not a means of identifying Ramadan. Only some of the Malikis said if you know calculations, you can use it if you believe that the hilal, the crescent shows that you yourself can fast, but you don't order anybody else to fast. Alright, which brings us now to the modern day of what's happening, of using calculations. More and more scholars, they're still a minority, but still their numbers are increasing. They're suggesting that it's a valid opinion to start Ramadan. And so many of the scholars, or some of the scholars, are saying for the sake of unity, right, if your area or your masjid perhaps uses it, it's okay for you to follow it. If you don't want to, that's fine. Nobody's telling you have to do something, especially if you don't believe that's the right way of doing it. It is fine. However, don't make it a point of tension and tell them, I'm not fasting, right? Don't do that. But for the sake of harmony, whoever wants to do it, then that is fine. And those who don't want to, that's also okay, that is fine. But the majority of scholars don't follow, I'm just being honest over here, right? I'm not doing this kind of stir the pot or anything, but this is the class of education. The majority of scholars don't follow that. The majority of scholars follow moon sighting. In fact, I would not be exaggerating if I say 99%, but the majority follow moon sighting, and the majority follow global moon sighting. So when you do a local sighting, you also have to be very careful. When you do local sighting, we're not doing continental sighting, because continental sighting is not local sighting. I know, unfortunately, the wrong way of practicing local sighting is to say North America. North America is a huge continent.
What's the difference?
So local sighting is your
Local.
locality, right?
Yeah.
Your city, right? is a confined area. I cannot have different time zones and call that local sighting. That is not local sighting anymore.
What is global sun?
Global sighting is anywhere in the world. Person sees it, then all Muslims fast.
But like if you see in Hawaii, for instance, right, after the time is gone, the same day, right?
As long as there's a day that connects you, a day or a night, then that's fine. It connects you. Now, because I try to follow updates about this, the recent fatwa from Amja is trying to combine both. They said to prevent any form of hardships, is that you can take it from anywhere from the east. Okay? Anything west of you, you can might not take it. Because west of you is after you. So for example, Hawaii is how many hours after us?
6.
5 or 6.
Whatever the case is, right? By the time you wake up in the morning, this is when you find out. Right? And so this is why they said, although if you want to be technical, many of the scholars will say, well, it counts, right? And if you haven't made the intention, you can wake up in the morning and try to ask, and you haven't made the intention, it's okay, just make it up afterwards. So it's just a day you have to make up. So it's not really a big deal. And if you did not make an intention, you wake up in the morning, you withhold from fasting, because you didn't make an intention. You still withhold because it's sanctity of the day. Because the Prophet ﷺ had one day, when I can't remember the day of the fasting, but he had woke up in the morning and said, "Man aftara minkum sa'iman," whoever one of you intending fasting, let him continue, and whoever has ate, let him refrain. Okay, so if you woke up in the morning and it turns out to be Ramadan, and you did not make intention, still refrain from eating because of the sanctity of the day, but you still have to make up that day later on. So it's just one day, it's not an issue, inshallah.
Then
Yes.
how do they say in advance that so such and such a day is Ramazan already declared?
Because they use calculations.
How can it be possible if this is the...
I'm not an astronomer, I don't know how they do it. But they do
But then
calculations.
you have to go from by the masjid or
They have to what?
go by the masjid, the majority?
For the sake of unity, it's okay to follow the majority. Inshallah, it's not prohibited, inshallah. I'm just giving you the fatwa that some of the scholars are mentioning it. Personally, you want to do something else, then it's fine. It's not a big deal. Because I know most people, I know for a fact most people don't like to follow calculation. They follow moon sighting, global moon sighting. They are completely 100%. Obviously, if you want to compare correctness or almost like, obviously they have the upper hand. But those who follow calculations for the sake of unity, inshallah, it's okay. Inshallah.
We're not global versus local.
What about global versus local? What about it?
Like, is there an argument there? To be had?
Well, there is an argument, but the fact that the majority of scholars went with global tells you something. Once again, we're learning Hanbali Fiqh, so just go with global.
Global is recommended.
So the Hanbali opinion, the opinion of the majority scholar, it is global.
That is the first priority, like
Yes.
according to the first.
Yes. Alright, now who's obligated to fast?
Wait, question, right?
Yes.
You said there's only one person is required to see the moon in Ramadan, but 2 for other months.
Yes.
Is there a reason? Specific reason?
The Prophet said this. It's from Hadith of the Prophet.
Why is there 2 for, he said that there are two persons for each?
Because one person is enough because you want to make sure you don't miss anything from Ramadan. But 2 is because you don't want to leave Ramadan early. But all other months, for it to determine that it entered, you need 2 witnesses. And it actually has to be 2 male witnesses.
It's understood.
Okay? So who is it mandatory upon?
Muslim or
3 categories, right? So there's 3 requirements. Muslim, mukallaf, qadir. غير حائض ومنفسد. Right? So
Muslim.
Muslim, obviously has to be Muslim, so a non-Muslim fasting is useless, because no intention or nothing. Mukallaf, which means they're liable, which means that they are sane. This is mandatory upon them. Okay? They're sane, and they are of the age of puberty. Now, differentiate between the worship being valid and the worship being mandatory. Because, for example, a discerning child, if they fast, their act of worship is valid, but it's not mandatory upon them. Now, because it's not mandatory, doesn't mean that they don't fast.
no.
No, you should train them. Okay.
For the training.
But here's another condition, by the way, that they're discerning, and they're able to, physically able to. Because some children, yes, they're discerning, but they're still at an age, or still their body's unable to withstand fasting. So you might want to train them like on half a day, or whatever the case is. So, but before the age of puberty, they should be able to fast a full day. But you have to train them. And so many scholars say you treat it like prayers. You train them from 7, and once they hit the age of 10, then you start scolding them. You start spanking them for not fasting, stuff like that, because they need practice. The acts of worship require practice. Because if you start later on, they'll find it very difficult. And so once again, we're back to who's mandatory upon is the Muslim, the liable, which means that they are seen at the age of puberty, and qadir, which means they are bodily able. So that takes out what? Sick, the old and feeble, the sick, automatically, right? Now there are people who don't necessarily have to fast, but those generally put them in there. And then the fourth category, the fourth condition is غير حائض ونفساء. A woman that is not on her menstrual cycle, or she is not in her postpartum bleeding. Because if a woman on her postpartum bleeding, or she is in her menstrual cycle, it is prohibited for her to fast. It's a nullifier or a negating for fasting. Okay, so this is the person who is obligated to fast. Now, who is excused from fasting?
Sick.
Good, the sick. Now here's a question. What kind of sickness are we talking about? Slight fever, sniffles.
No, sick, if you fast, it will have consequences on your body, which means it shouldn't harm you. If you're sick and fasting will harm your body.
Good, so it will increase, for example, your sickness.
Yes.
Okay, so that's true. But if also it will delay your recovery, you can break your fast. Delaying your recovery. If it will exert a lot of hardship, also you break your fast. Okay, so it's not just like, I have a slight headache, or I have the sniffles, or I might have sore throat, or anything like that, or a slight fever. Those don't count.
Do you make it up?
But also, here's the thing. Of course you make it up. Yes. All fasts need to be made up.
Even for old people?
We'll get to the old people, okay? And even sickness, by the way, is categories. So there's chronic and acute. Chronic sickness, you just can't fast at all. And it's long-term sickness, you don't recover from it. Acute is temporary. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, whoever is sick with you or traveling, then the number of counts of days that you have broken, make them up. So this person who's acute sickness, or who's traveling. Chronic is different. So chronic is treated like a person who's feeble and old. They're not able to fast, so they break their fast. However, they need to, in return, feed a person for every day they have iftar. So the person who's chronically sick, they feed a person for every day they have iftar. Now, what do they feed them?
Exactly what they would eat.
Normal.
No.
What they eat.
I specifically asked that question because most people think they'll bring out, they cook food and they bring people to eat. No.
Water?
They get what you usually give in zakat al-fitr. Right? So half a sa', right? Half a volume of a sa'. A sa' is 4 pounds of food. And so half a sa' is 2 of those. So instead of 4, you're giving 2. From either barley, or dates, or raisins, or aqid, which is preserved milk, or the wheat, or the, the flour of wheat and barley. But if you're going to use the flour of wheat and barley, they have to be now the same weight, not volume, of the wheat and barley. So you find out the volume of half, 2 palms, full palms of barley, how much they weigh, and you use that same weight of flour. Okay? Or wheat, and use that same weight of wheat flour. Now, if you're going to give it, I have to rephrase that. If you're going to give it from wheat, it's actually just 1 palm, full palm. Everything else, it's half a sa'. Now, the Hanbali school of thought, they tell you can only give from those ones specified by the Prophet ﷺ. So it's either dates or aqid, preserved milk, which I know most people don't know, but the Arab, like people from Sham, they know it's called jamid. So it's preserved milk, so they use it. So either jamid, or tamr, or zabib, or qamh, or sha'ib. I think I'm missing one.
Not rice? Rice, no?
Rice?
So the Hanbali opinion is no, those are what suffices. If those don't exist, then it's what is the preserved food from the country. Rice, lentils, right? Any other preserved things.
So we cannot give in the form of money?
In the Hanbali school of thought, no.
No?
No money or other
No, you can't give it in the form of money.
No?
No.
Only Hanbali. The Hanbali, no money.
Okay.
Actually, the Hanbali, Maliki, and Shafi'i, no money.
Even Maliki?
Yes.
Everybody.
That's weird, because in Morocco we give money and our Maliki.
Only Hanafis.
Yeah, because
Only
They
Hanafis.
wouldn't give money.
But I tell you sometimes what happens. Because in Morocco, or even in a lot of the countries, what they do is they give a lajna, right? A group of individuals, they give the money. What they do is they take the money and they buy with it. This is what they usually do. But it's only the Hanafi opinion that you give money. So if you're following that opinion, it's fine. But I'm just mentioning that. Now also, by the way, it's only the Hanbali opinion that tells you should only give within those categories. The other school of thoughts allow other ones. So if you're following it, you want to follow that, that's okay. Right? I'm saying this is just, I'm giving you the school, the Hanbali school of thought. Now if you are in a place where they don't eat these things, right? They're not there, right? Because not everybody place has dates or has like an aqid or barley or whatever the case is. So you feed them from what they eat. Rice, lentils.
Can you tell the English terms for those things?
Lentils?
Akid,
Aqid is preserved milk.
preserved, like milk
So
powder?
it's no,
No,
it's solid.
Okay,
Right?
like cheese,
And they put salt with it.
like cheese.
like put
It's
in
not cheese.
like
It's not cheese.
Okay.
Right? But so the way they take it is they
curd milk. It's
but it's so solid.
Yeah.
Like it becomes very solid. And they usually take that when they travel.
yeah.
And they put water in it to kind of like dissolve it. And then they use it for cooking, use it for other stuff.
How do you make that?
I've eaten it and I've seen it
Uh-huh.
and I've had a friend cook with it, but I've never made it, so I don't know how they make it.
That's how they make it, yeah.
So that dates, that akid,
No, aqid is not
no,
date.
what is?
Tamr is
Tamar
dates.
and
Right.
akid.
Zabib, which is raisins,
Yeah,
right? Sha'ir is barley.
barley.
Bur is wheat. And then what else I mentioned?
Can you say all of them again?
We're gonna go over and read the text, okay? But okay, so here we're gonna go over them again. It is tamr, zabib, sha'ir, bur, aqid.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So it's not valid to give like a regular meal?
No. Meals are not. You give what you give in zakat al-fitr.
Raw.
Okay, so you don't give like.
No, you don't bring a person to eat food. You eat this because this has to belong to him. You give it to him. He does whatever he feels with it.
But
Sell
in
it, cook it, whatever they
America,
want.
who is going to take these things?
Sorry.
In America, who is going to take these
Yes,
things? I mean, in Pakistan or other
I'm sure they can use flour.
But still, you don't. I mean, it's very.
Everybody uses
difficult.
flour, right?
Yeah, but it's very.
but
difficult.
they don't like to use flour. They
No, but
the food,
you
yes,
give-
it makes sense more actually.
What?
Like feeding them with right food, it's.
I don't think we decide what makes sense or not.
Yeah. I have a friend, actually, she never gives money. She lives here, she will find people, she give them meat. She will never give money. Yeah, there are people, because that's something we have
But
to
these
follow.
are very difficult to find out this one.
Are there any requirements?
You can
to
give
whom
more,
you can
right?
give?
Yes, it's those who you give zakat al-fitr.
Sorry?
Those who you give zakat al-fitr. The poor and the needy.
So not any person as well.
No, you don't give any person. So when they say ta'am, right? When they say you feed, you don't call your friends and feed them.
So is the masjid gives us the, I mean, masjid should have the list of things.
Say what? No. Listen. Guys, listen up. When we're taking out, now this is you feed, okay, so we're talking about the elderly and the person who has an acute sickness. When they're giving out food because they're unable to fast, you're not feeding 60. It's just for each day you don't fast. So you're talking about maximum of 30 individuals. Okay? Now, okay, by the way, can you give all that? Can you give it to one person? Yes.
Yes.
You can give all that to one person. doesn't, like, it doesn't mean that you have to feed 30 individuals. Right?
30
Yes,
There's another situation where you have to feed 60 people, right?
yes, we're gonna talk about it.
So that's different?
Yes, that is different, we'll talk about it.
So that could it be like money per person or no?
No. All right, so, who's excused from fasting? So we mentioned, we finished who's obligated to fast, right?
Sick and
All right, so who's excused from fasting?
Sick,
Insane.
traveling.
The what?
Insane.
The insane. No, he's not excused, he doesn't have to fast in the first place.
The traveler.
So we're talking about those are individuals that are supposed to fast, but they're excused from fasting.
The traveler.
Traveler.
The traveler, that is one, but there's a condition for the travel, it has to be a traveling of one that you can shorten the prayer. You're allowed to, it should be a travel, you're allowed to shorten the prayer. Okay? And we said that has to cover a specific distance. You guys remember what the distance is?
Oh,
85.
The pregnant.
About 85 miles. Okay?
85 miles.
In the Hanbali school of thought. Okay? In the Maliki, I believe it's shorter. In the Maliki school of thought, I believe it's shorter. So in the metric system, it's about, I think about 130, 132 kilometers. In the Maliki Fiqh, I think it's about 84 kilometers, 82 kilometers. So there's a bit of almost like a 50 kilometer difference, approximately.
quick question.
Yes.
Is that like distance from point A to point B or like?
No,
the road
from
itself?
the border of your city to the point where you're reaching.
The
Like
time
if
that,
it's a windy road, for example.
It doesn't matter.
So it's just from the
No,
border to the...
yeah, even if it's on a wider road, it's okay.
Also the wide road, that would count.
Yes, that would count.
time factor.
You don't have to calculate the shortest distance.
Okay.
It's time
What's
factor,
the length of the
like in
journey?
a helicopter or flight.
No, it was not time by time, it's by distance.
Distance.
It doesn't matter. Now, even if it's not a travel of hardship, you can still break your fast. In fact, it's preferable to break your fast. It's disliked for you to fast on traveling. So it's preferable to break your fast. So traveling is one. And we mentioned the sick, person who has an acute sickness. It's preferable for them not to fast. And then we had mentioned the elderly. And there's another category, which is the pregnant and the nursing woman. Okay. Now, the pregnant and the nursing woman has different categories. They either fear for themselves, or fear for their baby, or fear for both themselves and the baby. Now this matters because how we deal with it afterwards when they make up is a bit different. Now in all three cases, they have to make up the fast that they did not fast. Only in one case, there's something additional that has to happen. That they have to feed, not them, the person who's in charge of providing for the child, which is usually the father. They have to feed a poor person for every day that the mother had missed. So, if she fears for herself, or fears for herself and the baby, she only has to make up the fast. If she only fears for the child, she has to make up for the fast, and the father has to feed for every day a person who, for every day that she did not fast. Is that clear? Like, she fears for herself only. Fears for herself and her child, so herself has to be included. Whenever her fear upon herself is there, she has to only make up the fast. That's it. She makes up the fast. Of course, not the father, the husband has nothing to do with this. So she makes up the fast. If she only fears for her child, then in addition to making up the fast, because she broke her fast, the father, the person who is in charge of providing for the child, whether the father or another person who's in charge, has to feed a poor for every day that she has missed.
But not like that same of
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing. Okay?
Half sa'. Half sa'.
Half a sa', except for wheat, it is 1 mud. Alright, now the aspect of intention.
If they don't fear like that, they can fast also.
Now these are excuses for them not to
Not to
fast.
fast. But if they,
But
they
if,
wish,
but if she doesn't fear herself or her
Yeah.
child, she cannot break her fast.
Yeah.
If she feels that, like, no, she
Can-
fears for herself, but she still fast, it still counts. All right, now, when I put intention there for a reason is because when it comes to fasting on Ramadan, obligatory fast, it is mandatory for us to make the intention during the night, during the evening. So from after Maghrib, anytime after Maghrib, we need to make an intention, okay, tomorrow I'm going to fast. Even if we committed afterwards things that are considered negating for fasting. Okay? So if I eat, obviously I'm going to eat, because after Maghrib I'm going to eat, I'm going to drink, I'm going to until so. But as long as you make that intention, so you have to make intention for every single day, because every single day is an independent act of worship.
But what if we make intention we're gonna fast, inshallah, the month of Ramadan?
So the Hanbali opinion is that you have to do it for every single one, because each one is independent.
Can't,
I'll tell you something. I intend to pray all 5 prayers today, but I still have to make intention for every prayer. So this is fasting, so you need to make intention for every single day.
can't.
Yes, there are scholars that tell you if you make an intention that you're going to fast the entire Ramadan, that's enough. You just have to renew it if you cut it off for a reason or another. You're traveling, you're sick, something happens, menstrual cycle, you have to renew the intention. But the Hanbali school of thought, because of a hadith from Prophet Aisha mentioned, she said there is no fasting for the person who does not make the intention the prior night. So the night starts from after Maghrib. Right? Now, do you have to see something?
No.
No. The fact that you get up for suhoor is sufficient of a intention. Because why else would you get up? Right? If you went to bed and you set up the alarm for suhoor and you didn't wake up, you intended. You actually made the alarm. Why are you making the alarm? So intention is a bit simpler than you think about it. But you just have to make the intention you're going to be fasting the night before. So that is the intention. Now this is only for Ramadan. If you're fasting voluntary fast, you can actually make intention during the day. Because quite often the Prophet ﷺ would wake up and he would go to his house of his wives and he asks, do you have something to eat? And they say no. And he'll say, Allahumma inni saim. Right? And so even if it's after Dhuhr time, you made intention, as long as prior to that you did not commit anything that would negate your fasting. You didn't have breakfast and coffee and tea and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to fast the rest of the day. No, it doesn't work. And you get your ajr, your reward from the time you made the intention.
So,
So the intention is so much, this is not the intention.
No, intention is in the heart. There's nothing specific you have to say.
We are not supposed to say it.
There's nothing associated with it. Right? So intention is something that you have in your heart.
You're not
If
going
someone
to say
says
it's
it.
Because I'll tell you where. Okay, so for example, a person just did not eat the whole day or drink because their stomach is hurting. Are they fasting? No, because they never made an intention.
But it's such he has stomach upset, he said, I'm fasting.
No,
But I said, it's not counting.
No, if he makes the intention, I'm gonna fast.
At 11?
It's fine. As long as he did not, from Fajr time, as long as he did not eat or drink or do anything that identifies his fast.
yes.
Right? Because as I said, the Prophet ﷺ would wake up in the morning, look for food with his wife. If he doesn't have food, he'll say, Allahumma inni saim. That's valid. Because when it comes to sunan of worships, the shara, the recitation makes it a bit easier. There's concessions in it. So for example, Qiyam al-Layl, you can pray sitting, is that right? Can you pray fard intentionally sitting when you can stand? No, you can't. Right? The nafila you can pray on your mount. When you're driving in the car, you want to pray nafila, I can pray.
Yeah.
But you can't do that with your fard. And so there are concessions because you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's meant that the wisdom behind it is to encourage us to do more. And so if you wake up in the morning, you feel like fast, let's make the intention. If it's voluntary. But for Ramadan, it doesn't count. Why? Because you're obligated to fast from the beginning to the end. That's why you can't do it from midday.
Can you make it in sahar time? It's not valid.
Can you make what?
Suhoor time?
The intention?
Yeah.
When you woke up for suhoor, you
That's
already
already
intended to fast.
Yeah.
Right?
So
understood.
you
Well,
have to, you have to keep
because
it
I asked
in
you a question.
Maghrib.
Why are you waking up for suhoor?
Yeah.
Do you want to fast?
But why you have to keep it in Maghrib time? Or the
No,
previous day?
I didn't say you have to.
Yeah.
I said you have to make the intention in the evening, at night. And our night starts when?
After Maghrib.
After Maghrib. So any time
But
between
sometimes-
Maghrib and Fajr, you made that intention, khalas.
You
You're
might
ready.
forget.
Even if you forgot in the middle. You don't have to
Obviously.
always bear in mind, I'm fasting, I'm going to fast, I'm going to fast. No, even if you became unconscious of that intention, the moment that you made it, I'm going to fast the next day, that counts.
So even kind of.
Because what if somebody, like Maghrib happened, he ate, he prayed Maghrib, and he said, inshallah, I'm going to fast tomorrow, and then he slept.
No. If
Woke up at Fajr.
he didn't make it, even once,
If he did not make the intention,
Yeah.
he has to make up that day. Okay? In the evening, yes.
There are some, like, who will make the niyat, but not get up, but does not want to get up for suhoor.
That's fine, he made the intention.
It's fine, right?
Yes.
Oh.
It's not, by the way, it's not mandatory to have suhoor to fast.
The suhoor is not mandatory.
No, suhoor is not mandatory. It is recommended. It is highly recommended.
It's sunnah.
Right? So when it comes to suhoor, and by the way, suhoor starts anywhere from after midnight. Not midnight as 12, after midnight, like, you need to calculate between sunrise and sunset. So anything after midnight is considered suhoor. And the least of it is drinking water. The most complete of suhoor is eating something. So eating even a few dates. That is the most recommended. And it's recommended to delay it as much as you can. But if you did not get up for suhoor, so who said suhoor is mandatory, is a condition for you to fast? It is not. Your prayer, like your fasting is still valid, as long as you made the intention. So for example, a person who's made the intention at Maghrib, I'm gonna fast tomorrow, and slept until Fajr, is he conscious of his intention? No, but it still counts. So when he wakes up in the morning, he's still fasting. Now we're not talking about, like, of course it's wrong that he purposely missed the Isha, that he purposely missed all these things. We're not talking about that. Because we're talking about, is it valid or not? Okay. Alright, so that is the intention. Now, what invalidates fasting?
Eating, drinking.
Eating, drinking.
Any prohibited thing,
Sorry, I didn't hear what you
all
said.
the prohibited things which.
So what are the prohibited things that we should not be performing? So eating, drinking, intercourse. What about foreplay?
All the other bad things like
Does it nullify or
No.
does foreplay nullify fasting?
lying and things like that.
Lying.
No, lying does not nullify fasting.
No,
I'm not saying it's okay to lie.
How about vomiting?
It's
Good, excellent. Vomiting, it invalidates your fasting, but only if it's intentional, induced.
Oh,
Yeah.
Induced vomiting, that invalidates your fasting. So if you, for example, if your stomach is feeling squeezing, and you're sitting there, all of a sudden you just vomit, it does not invalidate your fasting.
Yeah.
If you induce it, then invalidates it. Okay. Now something said about bleeding. What are you talking about bleeding?
sorry?
What are you talking about bleeding?
Nose
You said
bleeding.
bleeding.
You said
No,
nose.
yeah.
From the
Sometimes-
Nose bleeding?
Yeah.
No, that does not invalidate your fast.
How about giving insulin? There's
That's a good question.
It
Some people have
does.
to give insulin
It does.
every day.
It's a good question.
Because you're giving sugar to yourself.
But he
You give
needs it, he or she needs it.
Then she shouldn't fast or he shouldn't fast. He
No,
cannot.
it's okay, it's okay.
Because we're already on summer.
It's okay to fast?
So guys, listen up. So I'm gonna widen. So when the scholars talk about eating and drinking, yes, they mention it, but they mention it in a specific way. They say like كل ما يصل إلى الجوف. Anything that will go into the jawf, which means the vacuums in your body. Okay. Anything that will reach the vacuums will nullify, will invalidate your fasting. Okay. So, which means if you're specifically talking about eating and drinking, so if I put food just in my mouth, does that invalidate my fasting?
No,
No,
if you
you
don't
swallow.
swallow it, no.
If you don't swallow, that's true. What if I spit it, but some of the food got mixed, the flavor got mixed in my saliva and I swallow it?
Yes.
That invalidates it. Okay? So whatever, if you ever taste anything in your throat, it invalidates it. Now the limit of your throat starts from after the harf kha. Kha. See where kha is? Anything after the throat, and you can actually, there are taste buds there in the back. So that's why you say anytime you taste it. Which means that, for example, if I ever put eye drops, there's the tear ducts, they do connect to your canals and they do connect down to your throat. If you ever taste anything in your throat, it invalidates your worship, your fasting. Okay? Your ears, there is a canal to a pharyngeal region. Usually, your eardrums blocks it. However, if your eardrums have, for some reason or another, there's pores, they're wide enough, or you got punctured, and you put something and you taste it in your throat, then it invalidates. Okay? Is that clear? If you put anything into your skull, like this jawf, it'll eventually lead into your insides. That invalidates it. Is that clear?
What about the drawing of the blood test?
I'll get to this in a second. Just give me 1 second, okay? Now, we're in season of allergy. Many people use nasal spray, right?
Yeah.
If you use nasal spray and it reaches your throat, it will invalidate your prayers, your fasting.
Fast.
It invalidates your fast. Okay? Is that clear? Alright, now, here comes the other aspect. So in the Hanbali school of thought, anything that reaches your jawf, head, neck, throat, obviously, there's one tube to the other end. Which means also treatments, like rectal treatments, will invalidate your fasting. Anything that goes through the anal region will invalidate your fasting. Is that clear? Right now,
All school of thought or just Hanbali?
I'm specifically talking about Hanbali school of thought. Okay. Now, what about limbs then? Right? Now this brings us to the injection aspect of things. Okay? Injection aspect. What if it's in your limbs? So I'm not saying like an injection to the stomach, injection to the chest, because some injections don't go into those areas. I'm saying injection to your limbs, your muscle, arm, like your glutes,
So are we
thighs.
talking about like IV fluid?
No, into muscles.
Injection into the
Injections
muscle?
into muscles.
Only medicine.
Into muscles.
Only medicine?
Sorry?
Only medicine, not food like.
Okay, what if I swallow dirt? That's not food. Does it invalidate my fast?
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Yes.
Anything
That's
following
when you
is,
swallow
yeah.
something.
Good. So when we're talking about reaching the jawf, right, the vacuums in your body, anything that leads to your stomach, it doesn't matter if it's nourishing or non-nourishing. Okay?
When you inject something into your limb, it'll end up in that region anyway, right?
You're injecting. If you put cream, okay, guaranteed it will go into your skin and the bloodstream. Does it invalidate your?
No.
No.
So if you put perfumes, or it will seep through the pores. So that's not what we're talking about. So that's why they said the limbs, anything in your limbs, okay. That's one opinion in the school of thought, by the way, in the Hanbali school of thought. If you put injections in your limbs, it does not invalidate your act of worship.
Does not.
Now, because this is something that's a recent aspect of things, and so the Hanbali scholars who follow the Hanbali school of thought, they actually divided in this. Many of them tell you, no, it does not invalidate your act of worship. It does not validate
Your
your
siyam.
siyam. Okay, it doesn't. They said what it invalidates if it's going to be nutritional. So, for example, glucose solutions, right? IV. If you go to the hospital and put the IV, that is nourishment. So they tell you, listen, it's giving you about strength, so they made an exception. Now, some other scholars in the school of thought of Hanbali, they tell you, listen, even this, because you're putting it into your body, will invalidate. So for you to just stay out of it, like as much as you can, like if you don't need to take any injections, just don't do it. Okay? If you can delay any sort of things that require injection until after Ramadan, do that.
Or after breaking fast.
After iftar.
After iftar,
Right.
or after Ramadan if you need to. Okay?
But insulin.
So this brings us to the insulin
Yeah,
shots.
but that's very.
Okay? So insulin shots have to do the same thing. Now I understand that, if you understand how they work. So insulin shots, so insulin is the compound that allows your cells to absorb glucose. So you need it before you eat. This is why you need it. Naturally, when you eat, right? Naturally, when you eat, your body produces insulin because it tells your body's okay. Now, get ready. Glucose is going to be absorbed, so the cells can take it in. So quite often, most people take insulin shots. They need to take them prior to eating. They cannot eat before taking them. So before having breakfast, they need to take the shot, and then they eat, because otherwise the glucose is in their bloodstream, and that's the classification of diabetes. All right. So now, in that case, which means before they have iftar, what do they need to do?
Go to consider.
Take insulin.
Injection.
Take an injection. Is that right?
Before breaking the fast, you're saying?
No, before they eat.
Oh.
Before they eat, right? They need to take an insulin shot. Now, I'm not up to date on medications, but as far as I remember, there are fast-reacting insulins, which means you only need to take it about 10 minutes before you eat. So in that case, just delay it. Maghrib comes, take your shot, okay,
Break your fast.
and then break your fast. To stay out of the difference of opinion.
Just take like a Maghrib azan and then take the
Yeah.
shot.
So stay out of the difference of opinion. It's better to do that. Now, based on the school of thought that tell you can take things in your limb, they will allow insulin to be taken. Because you're fasting, there's nothing to take up in the first place. Right? So they tell you to take the insulin, but they don't allow you to take the solution. Now, the school of thought in the Hanbali, it tells you, no, even the limbs you can't do it, the insulin shot will break your fast. Is that clear? So that's one of the issues.
What
Alright.
did you say now? To break my fast if I take insulin?
So, in the Hanbali school of thought, There are two opinions because it's contemporary issues. These are recent issues. So one group of scholars tell you no. What matters is that it does not reach your insides, your stomach. Okay. So anything that will lead to your stomach, right? One way or other, connected to your stomach area. From your head, it's connected to your stomach, obviously, throat, whatever the case is. Whether from one side or the other side, if anything can lead to that passage, it'll invalidate. And so they tell you, look, limbs are solid. Okay. Meat, muscle. Okay. So they tell you no, it doesn't invalidate. The other says, no, it's anything you put in your body. So that will invalidate. So we're dividing them, right? So based on the one they say it doesn't invalidate, they say you can take insulin. But it's better to delay it after baking to stay safe. And the ones that tell you, no, anything put in your body will invalidate it, they tell you, listen, even insulin shots will make it invalid. Is that clear? All right, now, because we are on the topic of putting anything from anywhere inside, they tell you, so anything that mixes with your saliva is an issue. So quite often people ask, what about brushing your teeth, toothpaste?
Yes.
Right? Toothpaste is a bit of an issue. In the Hanbali school of thought, they mention something. They say it is prohibited, for example, to chew gum that dissolves. You know, gum that has flavor. It is haram to chew it. Okay? And it will invalidate your fast if you feel the taste in the back of your throat. So they say that has the same ruling as toothpaste. Toothpaste is very close to it. Because when you brush your teeth, it dissolves into your saliva, right? And so it's prohibited for you to use it. But it will invalidate your prayer if it reaches your halq. And if you taste it. Which most likely it will. So the best thing to do is brush your teeth after you have suhoor. Okay?
Now also, without
Now once again,
without
this is the Hanbali school of thought. Yes, there are other differences of opinion.
How about siwak?
Miswak is different. But be careful. There are flavored miswaks.
No.
Stay away from flavored miswaks. I'm talking about the real one, right? Like the real one without any additional artificial flavors or anything like that. That flavored miswak has the same issue. Right? So the regular miswak, right, is fine.
And that's not recommended after the wedding.
That is not recommended after zawad. In the Hanbali school of thought, it's disliked. But if you do it, it does not invalidate your prayers. You're fasting. Yes.
I have a very silly question. Sometimes while cooking, you forget whether you put salt or whether it's too hot. Can I just put it on the tip of my tongue?
The salt?
No, the taste of the cooking.
Oh, taste of, okay. So it is disliked. Okay, if you don't need to, it is not. It's disliked if you don't need to. But if you have to, some scholars in the Hanbali say it's okay as long as you don't feel it.
No, I just wash it.
Wash it out. And some say it's still disliked. This just disliked.
Dislike.
And what about
All right. So listen up. So we said okay. So far we covered the things that nullify your validate your fasting. We said anything that enters the jawf. We talked about injections. We talked about brushing your teeth, tasting the food. All right. And the other one we said was
what about the drawing of the blood? Someone
the what?
for the blood test, you know, if they
Okay,
draw the
good.
blood.
So one of the invalid. Wait, we mentioned something before that.
Vomit.
Vomiting. Good. Induced vomiting invalidates it. So that's number 2. Haid al-nifas obviously invalidates it. So the menstrual cycle and postpartum bleeding. Even if it's a minute before Maghrib, right? Yes, you do get rewarded for the entire day for fasting, but you have to make up that fast. It does not go unrewarded. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you, inshallah. But you still have to make up that day. So that is 3 things. Alright, blood. In this Hanbali school of thought, the only thing that invalidates your fasting that has to do with blood is hijama. Wet cupping. Hijama, that's it. Yeah. Because they consider it ta'abudi, it's an act of worship. You cannot measure anything else to it. So the hijama in the Hanbali school of thought, and this is something that's only specific to the Hanbali school of thought, it invalidates your fasting, and it's the wet cupping, not the dry cupping, because some people do dry cupping. That doesn't invalidate your fasting. Wet cupping, hijama, invalidates it for the person who gets it and the person who's performing it. Performing it, yes. After al-hajim wal-mahjum. Right? And so if you're fasting, obviously avoid hijama. Now, blood donation or blood testing. Do they take the same ruling?
No.
No, they don't. They don't. If you donate blood, it does not invalidate your act of worship. However, I would highly not recommend it because most people kind of get woozy and dizzy and they recommend you to eat something.
So like I can give blood or for testing for lab work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Blood testing, diabetes testing, blood, because that's a small thing. If you just bleed from your nose or something happens, there's nothing wrong with that. Does not
How
involve
about taking blood? Sometimes I might have to take blood from my baby.
Oh, infusion.
Nutrition, right?
Out and down.
Blood infusion.
Not at all.
If I'm sick, right?
It's like nutrition. Blood is,
Show me, need that, like, guys.
you can.
So if you require blood infusion, I would think you're already passing out and you're not doing well in the
Your
first
secretion of
place.
stuff.
Yeah.
Because I need to, you're gonna be dizzy, you're gonna be better.
All right, so that's the blood. So that's how many so far? Is that 4? Let's repeat them, right? Anything that goes inside internally, hayd al-nifas, hijama, inducing vomiting. Anything else? Is that we just mentioned 4 then?
Rectal treatment.
That is,
all treatment.
that's inside. Okay, that's on the inside. All right. Okay, intercourse is one of them. Okay, so having fulfilled intercourse will invalidate your fast, but also in addition to that, there is an expiation that you have to pay. Okay, the expiation is in order. You have to emancipate a slave. If it's not there, you have to fast consecutively 2 months. Consecutively, no breaks. If you break it once, you repeat again. Yeah, you start from 0. Okay.
2 months.
If you can't do it, then you have to feed 60 poor people. Okay. Now, if you are able to feed 64 people, the expiation drops. Okay? Is that clear? Now, this is one of the few expiations that drops. Other expiations in the Hanbali school of thought does not drop. So, for example, if you have to feed the poor because you're unable to fast, for example, in Hajj, right? There's a Hajj. If you're unable to do the Hajj, you need to fast. If you're unable to fast, you feed. Now, if you're unable to feed, you're excused. No, it's still responsible for it. When you're able to feed, you feed. However, this is the only case, or one of the few cases, there's another case, I can't remember it's on top of my head right now, where the expiation is forgiven if you're unable to fulfill it. Right? And that is the kafarat al-jima', right? Intercourse. Now I'm going to add 6th category that's independent from intercourse, is that if you release semen due to foreplay, right? If you ever reach a climax or semen due to foreplay, that will invalidate your fasting. Not just releasing semen, but even pre-ejaculation. That will result in invalidating a person's fasting. So that's the 7th category. Now, I'm going to mention another one, and a couple of more. One is that if you intend in the middle of the day to break your fast, just by intention. You remember how you fast by intention? But if you intend to break your fast in the middle of the day, then your fast is invalidated. Also, ridda, which means if you apostate, obviously this invalidates your fast, because your entire Islam is invalidated. It includes your fasting. Okay? So that's done with the valid fasting and expiations. So we're done with that, okay? So we're going to now take a quick read to about 2 to 3 pages. So inshallah, I think we covered most of them. Now we did not talk about the sunnahs of fitr, sunnahs of suhoor, the i'tikaf or anything like that. So let's just take a quick read to this, inshallah. Yes?
If you break your fast, the obligatory fast during the day, then do we have to fast for 60 days?
No.
Then-
1 day.
No.
Okay.
1 day.
The only time you have to go through, free a slave, emancipate a slave.
Yeah,
Free slave.
just simple by breaking fast, like if someone cannot carry it during the whole day and they break it. in the
I
middle of
understand. That rule for freeing a slave or fasting consecutive
2 months, 2 months.
2 months or feeding 60 individuals is only in one situation, is if you have intercourse. Now, if semen got released because of foreplay, it doesn't go into that category. Okay? It's a sin. It's a sin, and you have to make up that day. But it doesn't fall into that category. Is only for full-fledged intercourse. Okay. Is that okay? Yes, there are other schools of thought that tell you anything that you do intentionally to break the fast, you have to do one of those three. And I believe the Maliki school of thought abides by that.
You have to do what?
So,
Yeah.
so the Maliki school of thought, they looked at it. So the Hanbali looked at the hadith and they said this is a specific punishment. The Maliki said, no, this is punishment because he transgressed on the sanctity of the month. Which means that any form of anything of transgression in the sanctity of the month, of purposely invalidating your prayers, requires the same punishment. So if I ate on purpose, drank on purpose, did something that invalidates my fasting on purpose, I have to go either free a slave, fast 60 days, not 2 months. So it's not 60 days, by the way, it's 2 hilal months. So you can actually end up being 29 and 29 days. Okay. Or feed 6 individuals. But the Hanbali school of thought, you know, it's just localized to just one. Right? We're clear? Alright, so let's read this quickly. Right. قال الإمام رحمه الله كتاب الصيام وهو إمساك بنية عن أشياء مخصوصة في زمن مخصوص. So he said, fasting, it is the intentionally refrain from specific things during specific times, and I added for specific people. And I just added that to it. And so that specific time is obviously from Fajr to sunset, right? It's not from sunrise. Some people define it as sunrise. No, it's not from sunrise. It's from Fajr. Right? Sunrise is way after Fajr. So from Fajr all the way to Maghrib. Yes?
Excuse me. When there's a big controversy, a lot of comments, when do you stop eating suhoor? Like the timing. Some say,
Imsak.
There is no such thing as imsak.
You will see in calendar or something.
I know they put imsak, but there's no such thing.
so you can
You are allowed to eat all the way up until
That's
the adhan of Fajr. But be careful, you don't want him to say, like if you ever have something in your mouth and he says Allahu Akbar, don't swallow it.
Don't swallow it or?
Do not swallow it.
Oh.
Throw it out.
Okay, so up till, there's a big controversy. You know, some say 20 minutes, some
No,
say this.
forget about it.
Okay, good, thank you.
Because in Quran it says حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود.
Yes. So
So you can right before Adhan.
yes, before adhan.
Yeah.
Because the adhan is when you start seeing that khayt al-abyad min al-aswad, that gleam of light in the horizon, this is when you stop. This is adhan al-fajr. So you can eat up until then.
Okay, good.
So there's no, like I know this because in like a lot of people say like imsak on they call it imsak, which means hold. They put it on in Ramadan's calendar specifically.
Yeah.
Say adhan al-fajr imsak at this time, which means like oh my God, you eat afterwards, you have to repeat the fast. No, that's not true.
after that.
That's not true. It's not disliked. It's not recommended. It's nothing. Right? You can ignore all of that.
What about that, about 10 ayats? Could
Sorry?
be 10 ayats or something could be read before the...
Yeah, I mean,
Does not do with fasting.
you stop
eating 10 ayats before the time of Fajr or something.
There is no have-tos.
Yeah.
If you kept eating until Allahu Akbar,
Okay.
right, until then Fajr, it's fine. But just when he says Allahu Akbar, don't swallow that food, right?
Yeah.
But what if,
Yes.
for example, I didn't know that.
If what?
I didn't know that. I used to drink while Adhan was going on. So it means all those years have to pay.
Did you do it every single day?
No. Sometimes.
Which is Fajr.
I don't know. I can look into it, inshallah.
Can you tell me?
Alright, so let's continue, inshallah. It says, وصوم رمضان يجب برؤية هلاله فإن لم يرى مع صحو ليلة 30 من شعبان لم يصوموا وإن حال دون مطلعه غيب أو قطر أو غيرهما وجب صيامه حكما ضمنيا احتياطيا بنية رمضان ويجزئ إن ظهر منه وتثبت أحكام الصوم من صلاة وتراويح ووجوب كفارة ووطئ فيه ونحوه ما لم يتحقق أنه من شعبان ولا تثبت بقية الأحكام من نحو طلاق واعتاق والهلال المرئي نهار الليلة المقبلة. So this has to do with how you determine, Ramadan mentioned quickly, he says, the fast of Ramadan becomes obligatory with the sighting of the crescent moon. So that's the first way. If it is not sighted in the clear night sky on the 30th of Sha'ban, talking about the 30th night of Sha'ban, fasting is not commenced. So this is a clear sky, okay? So fasting is not commenced. If, however, its place of rising is obstructed by clouds, dust, and etc., such as smoke, for example, it is obligatory to fast with the intention of Ramadan as an assumed precautionary ruling, which will be sufficient if it becomes apparent. The rulings of fasting, so this is how we, now this is the three ways of determining Ramadan. And then he says afterward, the rulings of fasting, Taraweeh, and the obligatory expiation for intercourse during it, and etc. all apply. So this is referring to if we had fasted because there is something shielding us from seeing the hilal, which means all the rules of Ramadan take place. Fasting Taraweeh, expiration because of intercourse the following day, all these things.
So wait a minute, they are saying that on the 30th night of Shaban, if the sky is cloudy, then you will start fasting next day?
Yes, we mentioned that already. So the rulings of fasting, Taraweeh, and the obligatory expiation of intercourse during it, etc. all apply, so long as it has not been proven to be a day of Shaban. The remaining rulings, such as divorce and manumission of the bondservant, do not apply. So this has to do with what? So some people will say, you know what, on the first day of Ramadan you are divorced. Right? Yeah, don't ask why. I'm just giving you an example. Or they'll say on the first day of Ramadan you are a free slave. This doesn't apply if the first day of Ramadan you're fasting is because you could not see the crescent moon in a cloudy night. You're fasting, yes, but this rule doesn't apply because you have to be sure. Which means the second day, the divorce will fall and the slave will be freed. I know it sounds weird, right? Well, we haven't, like, you know, we did not cover the fiqh of family. The entire chapter of divorce has so many details. It seems that Muslims throughout history have come up with weird ways of doing divorces, right? And so they had to address all these things. They'll place conditions, right? They'll say, like, you know, once my brother comes back home, you're divorced, right? And so they talk about what if he had come the day before and you didn't know, right? If he came, like, you know, what if he had died, what if he didn't? Like, you know, it's just weird things, and it happens usually at the moment of anger, usually, right? All right. And so it says the crescent, which is visible during the day, is for the following night. And we didn't mention that. So what if you, on the 29th, the 30th night of Shaban, you went out and you did not see the moon, which means the next day you have to fast. Is that right?
Yeah.
If it is cloudy.
No, you don't have to fast. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
If it's not, you don't have to fast, right?
Yeah.
The 30th night of Shaban, clear sky.
Okay.
30th night of Shaban, clear sky. I don't see the moon, which means the next day is the 30th of Shaban. I do not fast.
Yes.
However, in the morning, I look up, wait a second, I see a crescent. Does it mean that day was Ramadan? No, it doesn't. Right? It's still the 30th of Shaban. They say that this halal is for the next day, which means that night, you still have to look for the crescent again. Okay?
Yes.
So you only look for it in the evenings at night. Alright, وإن ثبت رؤيته ببلد لزم الصوم الناس جميعا, which means if the sighting is confirmed in one area, everyone else is required for fasting. That is global sighting. وإن ثبت نهارا أمسكوا وقضوا. If it is confirmed in the day, it must be fasted and then made up. Which means that if, for example, on the 30th day of Shaban, 30th night of Shaban, clear sky, I did not see the crescent, I woke up the next day eating. However, a traveler from a distance comes and say, listen, I saw the hilal, which means today is actually Ramadan, which means now we all have to refrain from eating or drinking, but we have to make up the day. ويقبل فيه وحده خبر مكلف عدل. So which means in it alone for Ramadan, it is accepted by one who is of legal capacity and upright. Legal capacity, which means that he is an adult, sane, Muslim. Okay, whether male or female, whatever the case is. مكلف عدل, which means that they are upright. وَلَوْ عَبْدًا أَوْ أُنْثَى أَوْ بِدُونِ لَفْظِ الشَّهَادَةِ. So even if it's from a bondservant or a woman, or given without the wording of a testimony. He doesn't have to say, I testify. She doesn't have to say, I testify. So as long as they say it, that's it. وَلَا يَخْتَصُّ بِحَاكِمٍ وَتَثْبُتُ بَقِيَّةِ الْأَحْكَامِ. And it's not restricted to the ruler. So the ruler doesn't have to say, okay, so hold on. Now once this person sees it and the judge agrees, خلاص, done. And all the remaining rulings apply. Whether it's from divorce or expiation because of intercourse, whatever the case is. Then the author said, وَمَنْ رَآهُ وَحْدَهُ لِشَوَّالٍ لَمْ يُفْطِرْ, and whoever cites it for Shawwal alone, he does not break his fast. Why? Because you need two, right? وَلِرَمَضَانِ, and if it's for Ramadan, right? And by the way, it's not just he's not allowed to break his fast, it's haram for him to break his fast. Okay? It's haram for him to break his fast. وَلِرَمَضَانِ وَرُدَّتْ شَهَادَتَهُ لَازِمَهُ الصَّوْمُ وَجَمِيعَ أَحْكَامِ الشَّهْرِ مِنْ طَلَاقٍ وَعِتَاقٍ غَيْرِهِ. Now what if a person by himself, he has seen it, and his witness is rejected? It is mandatory for him to fast. Because I know I saw it.
Just
Yes?
him.
Just him. Right? Because he's sure he saw it. Now, the other people are not obligated because he's not considered trustworthy, for example. Ramadan and their testimonies is rejected. So, okay. So, but if they cite it alone for Ramadan and their testimony is rejected, they are required to fast all the rulings of the month, including divorce and manumission of bond servants, and etc. apply. Alright, so is this clear? This page is clear? Alright, next page. So this has to do with obligations, breaking the fast and intentions. فصل ويجب على كل مسلم قادر مكلف لكن على ولي صغير مطيق أمره به وضربه عليه ليعتاده ومن عجز عنه لكبر أو مرض لا يوجب وقوفه أفطر عليه لا مع عذر معتاد كسفر من كل يوم لمسكين ما يجزئ من كفارة. Alright, so over here what he's talking about is saying is that it is obligatory upon every capable Muslim of legal capacity. It is, however, required for every guardian to order the capable minor to fast. So they have to be capable minors, which is what age? 7, at Hijri calendar. And smack them for it in order that they become accustomed to it. Right. Now, whoever is incapable, who's incapable to fast due to old age or terminal illness, so it's an acute illness, is to break the fast and is obligated for them breaking it, unless coupled with a common excuse to travel, to feed one poor person the amount which suffices an expiation for every day. We mentioned what that was, right? Right, now I'm going to explain this over here when he says, unless coupled with common excuse such as a travel. So for example, what he's talking about over here is if a person who is not fasting because they are old of age, okay, they're feeble, or because they have a chronic sickness, they're at home. However, if they traveled, now when you travel alone, that should be grounds for you breaking your fast. Now they have combined two reasons for breaking their fast. One, their age or their sickness, and second, something like travel. In that case, they don't have to feed a poor person.
Take whichever is easier.
No, because their excuse in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay? Now this is the second reason, the secondary reason. لما بعد عذر معتاد كسفر, right? Because he had broken his fast by an excuse that is a valid excuse, another valid excuse. ولا قضاء عليه لعجزه, and there's no point of making it up. Because if you travel, you're supposed to make it up. So he's an older person traveling, does he have to make it up?
No.
So because he doesn't have to make it up, he doesn't have to give kafar. Is that clear? He doesn't have to feed the poor.
You don't have to make them no kafaras. Doesn't have to be the words.
He doesn't have to feed the poor.
And he does not have to make it up.
But
This
if
is
he's
all.
not-
He can-
Neither make it up nor feed the poor.
But if he's not travelers, then
But he doesn't travel, he has to feed the poor.
he has to feed.
He or she. They. Alright. So Rahimahullah said, وَسُنَّ فِطْرُهُ وَسَنَّ فِطْرُهُ وَكُرِهَ صَوْمٌ بِصَفَرِ قَصْرٍ. And he said, it is recommended to break the fast, وَسُنَّ فِطْرُهُ وَكُرِهَ صَوْمٌ بِصَفَرٍ وَقَصْرٍ, keep fasting during a journey, in which shortening is permitted. And by the way, it's similar, like there's also a sunnah for a person who is sick to break their fast, and it's disliked for them to fast. And we said a person who would increase their sickness or delay their recovery.
It's not sin, right? It is disliked.
It's disliked, it's not a sin. Disliked. Even if there is no difficulty. So if the person is traveling, he can break his fast, is recommended, even if there is no difficulty.
So he's not sick though, but he's just traveling.
Yeah. Traveling by itself is an excuse to break your fast.
So you don't have to fast?
No.
No, it's better not, right? It's sooner.
It's recommended not
But I have to make it up then.
to. Of course.
But if I can,
No, it's
If you can fast,
Still
Your
better.
fast is still accepted,
Will be
but it's
accepted?
not recommended.
Oh, not recommended. But it's not like I'm causing another sin by fasting, no.
It's not a sin.
Okay. Yeah,
It's
but
not
if I
recommended.
can fast, I can. But making it later is not easy. Right? Making it later is not easy. Because
So, there's another thing I
prepared
want
for
to
Ramadan anymore.
Alright, let's just continue this quickly, right? وكره صوم حامل ومرضع خافتا على أنفسهما أو الولد ويقضيان ما أفطرتا ويلزم من يمول الولد إن خيف عليه فقط إطعام مسكين لكل يوم. So he said it is disliked for the pregnant and nursing women to fast while they fear for themselves or their child. They are to make up what they broke, referring from fat to fasting, and it is further required of someone feeding a child while fearing for the child only to feed a poor person for every day. Remember we covered that. ويجب الفطر على من احتاجه لإنقاذ معصوم من مهلكة كغرق ونحوه وشرط لكل يوم واجب نية معينة من الليل ولو أتى بعدها بمناف لا نية الفريضة. So these are two different things. So the first one is breaking the fast is obligatory if required to save a sacred life from demise, such as drowning. So for example, you see your child or your father or your mother, whatever the case is drowning, and you have to break your fast to save them, you have to break your fast. Right now, the second part, what they mentioned over here, it says for every obligatory fast, there must be a specific intention made at night. Now, obligatory fast is, by the way, more than Ramadan. Because a mandatory fast, because you, for example, you did nadhr, right? You made an oath that you're going to fast, you have to make it the night before. Ones that have to do with expiation, you need to make the intention the night before. For every obligatory fast, there must be a specific intention made at night, even if what contradicts it is done, meaning I made the intention at night, but for example, I had relations with my spouse, or I ate and drank. Generally during the day, obviously, but it doesn't matter at night. So that's why it says even if what contradicts it is done, but not the intention of mere obligation. So he's saying that it's not a condition, it's not mandatory to say that I'm going to fast a fard. Just your intention to fast Ramadan is sufficient. The intention to fast a nadhr is sufficient. And then he said, وَيَصِحُّ صَوْمُ نَفْلٍ مِمَّنْ لَمْ يَفْعَلْ مُفْسِدٍ بِنِيَّةٍ نَهَارٍ وَلَوْ بَعْدَ الزَّوَالِ. He says voluntary fasting intended during the day, even after the zawal, is valid so long as nothing which spoils the fast has been previously committed. وَيُحْكَمُ بِالصَّوْمِ الشَّرْعِيِّ الْمُثَابُ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ وَقْتِهَا, and it's deemed as a legislated fast and will be rewarded from the time of its commencement. So a person who fasts from Fajr obviously will be rewarded more than a person who fasts from Dhuhr. It makes sense though. Right? So this one again for voluntary fasts. ومن خطر بقلبه ليلا أنه صائم غدا فقد نوى وكذا الأكل والشرب بنية الصوم. And if someone conceives that they will fast tomorrow, they have made an intention, just like eating and drinking with the intention of fasting. So that's as sufficient as an intention. Alright, so these are invalidators. How long have we been talking? Okay, we're going for quite a while now, right? Okay, so we'll just finish this last one, inshallah. So these are the invalidators, and we'll stop here. And so which means we have like just about 2 or 3 more pages to finish. We'll do that next week. Okay? So I'm just going to do, should I just go with the invalidators, or you guys tired? A lot of information, right?
Beneficial.
Let's finish all.
It's just the invalidators. We covered them. Okay. Now I grouped them into 8 categories, but if you pick them one by one, there'll probably be more. But I just grouped them. All right. So he said, رحمه الله, ومن أكل أو شرب أو اتحد بما علم وصوله إلى حلقه من كحل ونحوه أو أدخل إلى جوفه شيئا أو وجد طعم علك مضغاه بحلقه أو وصل إلى فمه نخامة فابتلعها. Actually, I forgot to mention this. أو استقاء فقاء أو كرر النظر فأمل. Let me just take this one by one. Now, here's a situation, I forgot to mention this because it's important. You know, sometimes phlegm comes into our mouth, right? If phlegm comes into your mouth, whether it comes out from your chest or from your head, from your nasal region, if it goes into your mouth, right, and then you swallow it, you broke your fast. Because your mouth is considered from the external.
Sometimes
So anything that comes from behind the kha into your mouth now it's outside. If you swallow it back again, you invalidate your fast.
But the
Just spit it
saliva-
out, just spit it out.
But saliva.
but
Don't
the
swallow it.
saliva
But it comes, no, not saliva,
What's that?
phlegm.
Cough, right?
No, not
Mucus.
some
Mucus.
mucus, phlegm, mucus, right? So if some people are congested, it comes from their nose down. Or sometimes when they have a congested chest, like when they cough, it comes out.
Yeah.
Okay. So once it passes the kha into your mouth, spit it out. Don't swallow it again. Okay. The same ruling has to do with vomit. It comes out, it goes into your mouth. Don't swallow it. Most people won't because it's disgusting, right? Don't intentionally swallow it. Spit it out. If you bleed in your mouth and blood comes into your mouth, don't swallow it. Spit it out.
How about when we're doing wudu, the water penetrates a little bit down and we spit it out?
Excellent.
Between through the...
Excellent, right? If you now when you're fasting, you should not exaggerate in the rinsing your mouth or the taking into your nostrils. You should not exaggerate. Okay? But if you, however, you exaggerate it, it's disliked to exaggerate. But if you exaggerate it and water came in, it is fine
That's fine.
because it's not intentional. Okay? So you have to remember, if you ever eat, right, or drink unintentionally or because you're forced to, then your fasting is still valid. Okay? Yeah. So that includes the mumble, because usually when you're doing your nose, you're not intending to drink water.
Yeah. I try to avoid it, but sometimes I can't.
I know, it's sometimes. So even, by the way, when you rinse your mouth, there's always remaining water. You don't have to spit it out. But it doesn't mean that, because you're thirsty and you're feeling hot, you just always kind of do something in your mouth and think, oh, it's okay. No, don't do that. Okay? We're talking about wudu over here. Can you dive in a swimming pool because you're hot and it's a hot day? Yes, that's fine.
Yes.
It's okay.
Swimming is a
You can showers, whatever the case is. Yes.
Some people keep spitting. Is that, they don't want to take in the saliva?
No, saliva is fine.
That's fine, I know.
Yeah.
I tell them,
It's disliked to gather it. Some people gather saliva and just swallow it.
I mean, it's very normal.
And by the way, some scholars say that invalidates your fasting. But the Hanbali school of thought is disliked. They say it's disliked because you want to stay away from, because some of the scholars said it invalidates it. So just stay away from it. They said, don't do it.
Just like to swallow in general, if you're
No.
gathering.
To accumulate it.
Accumulate them.
They just sit there, just accumulating in their mouth and then they swallow it. You find it funny they do that. All right. And so he said, the author said, وَمَنْ أَكَلَ أَوْ شَرِبَ أَوْ احْتَحَلَ بِمَعَانِ مَوْصُولُهُ إِلَى حَلْقِهِ مِنْ كُحْلٍ وَنَحْوِهِ. Right? So he said, whoever deliberately chooses to do the following while aware they are fasting will invalidate their fast. And he said, eat, drink, or apply eyeliner. Remember we said because of the tear ducts, which is known to reach the throat, such as kuh. Okay. So all this will, what? Because when you put kuh, right, it's referring really, kuh is what? Eyeliner, right? So eyeliner, don't you start from here? You have tear ducts here, right? It can be so powerful and strong, your tears can take it into the tear ducts. And so you can, if you feel it in the throat, it invalidates your siyam. Now it doesn't mean that it always does that, right? Some people naturally their body does it. They know, they say every time I put it, I feel it. So for them, it's haram for them to put it. They shouldn't put it. Alright, it will validate fast. So eat, drink, or apply eyeliner, or insert something inside themselves. Right? So we said al-jawf, it includes the stomach area, right? Because all these things. Ila jawfi, insert something inside themselves, or detect the flavor of gum being chewed in the throat. And so I was now, by the way, the ilk they're referring to, there's two different types of ilk, right? So there's the gum that most people know here, the flavored stuff, that is actually haram to chew. The one that they're referring to is when it's almost like you're chewing on rubber. So there's a specific kind of thing.
Arabic gum.
Not Arabic also has a bit of flavor. There's a specific kind of, I don't know if it's from Yemen or from somewhere else, but it's almost like you're chewing on rubber, right? It doesn't dissolve, there's no flavor, no nothing, right? So that one is disliked to chew on it. So this is what they're referring to. So, وَجَدَ طَعْمَ عِلْكٍ مَضَغَهُ بِحَلْقِهِ أَوْصَلَ إِلَيْهِ فَهِمَ. Or actually, you know what? think they might be referring to the other one that dissolves, but it's not permitted for you to use that in the first place. But if you feel at the end of your throat, it invalidates your fasting. Translation is being swallow balgham, phlegm, that reaches the mouth. Which means induced vomiting. Glance, repeat, so this is, okay, so these are the categories. Now, these next following ones are things that stir your sexual desires and can result in either releasing of semen or pre-ejaculation. So this is, he said, glance repeatedly or masturbate, which stimulates ejaculation or orgasmic fluid. Now, by the way, for repeated glancing, it only invalidates if a person releases semen, not pre-ejaculation. Kiss, touch, or intimate acts without penetration, ejaculating either orgasmic or arousal fluid, that's your pre-ejaculation, or performing cupping, which draws blood, or has it done, all these will invalidate your fasting. It is not broken due to the following things. So it said, لا بفصد وشرط, right? So the fasd essentially has to do when you cut an artery or a vein to draw blood from it. وشرط is you are causing incisions. ولا إن فكر فأنزل, not you're thinking until you ejaculate. You're obviously thinking of thoughts that arouse a person. ولا إن فعل شيء من جميع المفترات ناسيا أو مكرها, any of the nullifiers of fasting being committed forgetfully or under duress, which means they're forced to. Some people ask, why do we need to know this? So for example, right now, people in China, Muslims in China, they're being forced to not fast, eat and drink. And so because they're being forced, they don't realize that because they're being forced, they can actually continue their fasting. Right? They just can pretend that they're eating, even if they eat just a little bit, and just so that they can realize and just ignore it. Their fast is still valid. May Allah save them and alleviate their pains and hardship. Alright, ingesting water used to clean the mouth and nose, even if it was exaggerated or done more than 3 times, unintentionally ingesting a fly or dust, or swallowing saliva that is gathered in the mouth, all that does not invalidate your fasting. Right, I will stop inshallah over here, because the next chapter has to do with the expiation and then recommended acts in fasting. And then followed, I think, by i'tikaf, is that right? Oh, voluntary fasting and i'tikaf, inshallah. So we'll meet next week, inshallah, as scheduled. Yes?
There's some ladies who has irregular menstruation, taking medicine to not to have their periods. Can they do that and fast?
Is it allowed to take medication that will stop your menstrual cycle and fast? Yes, it's allowed. As long as it doesn't harm you. As long as it doesn't bring harm to you.
Yes.
Yes?
The perfumes are also perfume.
Okay, so with perfumes, alright, so anything that you do purposely that would result into, once again, going inside, you cannot do, it's invalid. So, not just perfume. So for example, some people, this is predominantly what happens in the Gulf area. Bukhur, right? So bukhur, when it burns, it releases particles. So if you intentionally go like this and smell it, and those particles go into your nostrils and reach your throat, done. Okay? Perfumes, you have to be careful. Okay? So if I spray it, okay, and then some of those particles go through my nostrils and I feel in my throat, done. Not if I do it intentionally, right?
Okay.
Unintentionally, that's something else. Is that clear?
If he smells someone else wearing it.
So if I go like this, right, that is intentional, right? If somebody sprays it, and I smelled it and went through my throat, it's not my fault.
Alright.
Okay?
And similar to face cream, again, it's going into our skin.
No. One thing, okay, cream and skin is fine.
Okay, alright.
Cream and skin is fine.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good question.
Yes.
If you have a relationship with your spouse, so both have to do the same thing?
That's a good question.
And
So the
second-
expiation I'm just going to answer that quickly. So expiation for intercourse, is it both on the male and the female? The male is treated a bit differently than the female. For the male, there's no such thing as excuse out of forgetfulness or being forced. Okay? If it happens, you have to do the expiation. For the female, if she is forced, she just has to make up the day. If she did it out of forgetfulness, she just has to make up the day. That's your first question.
But if they're involved, then they both.
If it's consensual, both did it purposefully, then both have to do the expiation.
Second question about the wet dreams.
Okay, good. I forgot to mention that. So male, especially young ones, they get this. So if you wake up and you realize that in your sleep, semen came out because of a wet dream, it does not invalidate your prayer. Because you're not doing it intentionally. Right? I'm sorry, it does invalidate your prayer, by the way. It does not invalidate your fast. Actually, which reminds me, if a couple had relations at night, and they woke up in the morning without having ghusl, are they allowed to fast?
Yes.
Yes, they're allowed to fast. Okay? That's not to this separate this from that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jazakumullah. One more question? Mouthwash. Same thing as toothpaste. SubhanAllah, alhamdulillah.